Hello, everyone, and welcome to our copywriting workshop where we will be focusing today on basically three things: artist bios, artist statements, and about pages on your website. So definitely, I didn't want to do this workshop alone because I think that we have someone in our group who is more than qualified to come support us today. So I'm really, really thankful and excited that Dakota said yes to joining us today. So as you all know, Dakota is, yes, a visual artist, but she's also an artist of the word, right? So she's a copywriter and editor for creative entrepreneurs. And she immediately said yes when I invited her to come join us today and give you some live feedback on your copywriting. So how this is going to happen. So hi, Dakota.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. So what we're going to do today, we're going to keep it super simple and super tangible also. We want to give you tangible tips, not spend the whole time, going into theory. So I've prepared a very short presentation that I'm going to go super quickly through. And if there's anything, Dakota, that you want to add, just stop me and please feel free to add anything you want to add to the presentation. And then really quickly, I want us to just jump in, and I'll share my screen. I've opened up all the pieces of content that artists have asked us to review, and I think we'll have time to spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes per item. And what's great is that Dakota and I shared some initial thoughts on what we wanted you to gain from this workshop, but we haven't talked about the pieces of content that we're going to be. So we both have our notes, but separate. So that's fun because you'll also see that it's all about perception, right? So I might see something, Dakota might see it differently, and it's going to be interesting to see where we either agree or agree to disagree. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, great. So, and not only are we doing this live, but we also have a live painter with us. So Janet is listening and painting at the same time, which is lovely. I love that. I love that because making the most out of your time. Okay, let me share my screen so that we can just start quickly with the presentation. Okay, perfect. So can you just nod if you're seeing this? You are? Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay. So what we'll talk about today, right? So the number one thing to keep in mind when you are writing in terms of whether it's web copy, because a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, we're going to go into the specifics of bio and artist statements, but really everything else we're going to talk about today is really all about how you write for marketing, right? So it can apply to website, it can apply to social media, it can apply to even your newsletter, email marketing, okay? So of course, we're going to specifically look at to the bio and artist statement, but the website and social media as well. And most importantly, we're going to talk about copywriting, your specific copywriting, okay? But before we get into the writing part, I just want us to take a step back and talk about branding, because branding, right, is going to our branding, and I'm not talking about a logo or a color palette here, right? I'm talking about the essence of what it is you want to communicate and what you want to stand for in your business has to be reflected in the way that you write, right? There needs to be a connection between what you stand for, what you want to say, and what you're actually saying. Otherwise, people will not understand you, they will not connect with your message, and your message will not come across properly, okay? So what branding is, right? What it does is that it helps you stand out, it helps you be memorable, and it helps you build your credibility. And, we've talked about this recently with a few posts on the lab about people asking questions about, should I do a promo for the holidays? Is it too much of a busy time? Or should I do something for Black Friday, Cyber Monday? Should I wait in January? But January is a slow time for sales, right? So, but when you have a brand that stands out, that's memorable, and that you're credible, right? That's when you're able to cut through the noise, right? Where people will actually seek what you have to say, will want to know what you have to say, instead of people just receiving the message amongst 1,000 other messages, and they don't really remember or capture what you have to say and then take action, right? So, and sometimes we have to go a little more in depth with our brand because we either want to say too many things, and we say so many things that ends up we're saying nothing, right? Or we're just hearing a lot of things outside, and we're trying to resemble what school or what other people are doing that we like, but then it's not really authentic, and we're not going deep enough to really create an impact and resonate with the people we want to resonate. We actually had a conversation about this. Grace.
So I actually have some thoughts about this too. One of the things that I've come across as I've been looking at marketing plans is this idea that you, when you're creating your content plan and you're picking your launches, that you, I apologize because I'm getting a little off track. First of all, when you're choosing what you're launching, you only have to make that decision once. So like, I think it was Valentina that posted in the lab group early this morning and was going, now I feel weird about posting this. And when you pre-schedule that content, not only can you check to make sure that it works with your branding, but then you don't have to fight with yourself again. And so it's a nice way to not have to keep feeling unsure about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also, like you said, when you map it all out, right, then you have like a bird's eye view, and then if, as you're writing, you can come back to something you wrote earlier and say, okay, no, this is maybe not on brand, or this is really the direction I want to take. And sometimes, I get questions in the lab about, well, I posted this, it didn't work. Why aren't people responding? Why is nothing happening? Well, it's because you're looking at, and often I know the answer annoys you when I give that answer, but it's because you're really just focusing on a post when you should be focusing on a campaign, right? One post does not make a campaign, the same way that one logo does not make a brand, right? So when you want to get a result from either launching a new body of work or launching a new service or getting people to hire you for a commission, right? You can't look at it in a scattered way, right? One post here, oh, nothing's working, then you question everything that you've done. No, you need to look at it really in terms of a campaign to make sure that you're on brand, to make sure that your messaging is clear, to make sure that enough people will be reached and will see your message, right? And to make sure that you're not leaving any blind spots, anything you haven't covered, right? So yes, scheduling content, viewing things as a campaign rather than, spurts of here and here, and I want to sell, I put 3 posts out and I don't really know how it all fits in and how I'm utilizing all my communications channels. We're going to talk about communications channels later, but that's absolutely right. Okay. So what are we talking about when we're talking about a brand, right? It's what people think of when they hear your name. It's everything the public thinks it knows about you, both factual and emotional. There's another quote that says your brand is what people think and say about you when you're not in the room, basically. Okay. So and we actually had a conversation about this with Grace this week, right? About when you can't try to be everything for everyone, and you basically need to, that people can say, oh yes, I know this artist, she does this, or she's all about that, right? If it becomes too complicated, if you're about too many things, and I'm not saying that you need to be just about one thing, right? But it needs to be aligned, it needs to work, it needs to be clear, and it needs to be repeated. I know that some of you are very wary that you're bothering people with your message, right? That you're repeating yourself, that you keep saying things the same thing over and over again. But trust me, I've worked in PR long enough to know that the only reason that we remember things is because they are hammered to us again and again and again. Okay, so you can't, if you want people to repeat or know what you're all about, they can either guess it, which you don't want, or you can package it in a way that it's so clear to them that it just goes into their brain, and then they can say it right back at someone who asks about it. Okay, so don't worry too much about repeating yourself, but rather make sure that you're relevant, that you're coherent, and you're always working towards sharing those same themes over and over again. Okay?
Yeah, on the technical, sorry, Catherine.
Sure,
on the technical side of that,
Yeah.
just keep in mind that algorithms make it so that people are not seeing your post very often. So if your post is aligned with your brand and it is giving them a small piece of what you're about, you can repeat that 3 or 4 times, and chances are somebody's going to see it once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so
the people who are going to see it more because of the algorithm, the reason they're seeing it more, the reason why the social media channel is putting it more in front of them is because they've shown through their behavior that they're interested in what you have to say. That's why Facebook is posting that post in front of them again and again. So it's great because we know they're interested, so they're seeing it more, right? The same way we were talking with Grace, I mean, you have experience with that also, Dakota. I mean, you can repeat the same message 100 times and do it 100 different ways, right? And how is that done? Through storytelling, right? So your point can come across, you can get the same point across 100 times and do it 100 different ways if you're telling 100 different stories, right? Think about children's book, right? Most children's book are about what? Be generous, be kind, love your sister and brother, don't hit them, eat your food, like
being brave.
Yeah, be brave, be respectful. And there's like millions of children's book out there, right? Why? Because one story can resonate with my son, but it's not going to resonate with my daughter. But then another one's going to resonate with my daughter, but it's the same message we're trying to get across, right? So the use of storytelling can really help you get your point across and get your messaging and your brand across as well. Okay, so your brand, right? We talked about this before. What makes a brand, right? It's your values, your personality traits, experience, skills, uniqueness, messaging, client experience, rituals. I really don't want to go too deep into this because we have a workshop on the lab that's all about branding. So if you want to go more in depth about branding, feel free to go back to that workshop, and you'll have detailed content on that. What I really want today is, when I said at the beginning, the number one thing that you need to think about when you're writing is not about you. It's about the person who is reading, okay? So, and we need to make it all about them, okay, to make their client experience, their journey interesting, relevant, worth their time, and valuable, right? So that's where the sweet spot is, right? When you align your brand, right, with what your target audience wants, okay? Ideal collector, target audience, let's call them how we want to call them. And you know, again, you can revisit the target audience workshop if that can help you. But remember, it's not about trying to guess who's going to like our work, right? But it's more about being proactive and thinking about who do we want to serve with our work, right? Who do we want to get up to and work with every day in our business, right? And who will resonate with the kind of messaging and client experience and values that I want to create and share, okay? And once you have these two come together, that's when you start communicating and people will engage, right? Because again, like Dakota said, and technically, if you want your open rates for your email, good open rates for your email, if you want your social media posts to get seen even through the algorithm, because of the algorithm, well, engagement is key. And the best way to get engagement, right, is to make that emotional connection, right? So if there's no emotional connection, then engagement will be obviously very low, okay? Did you have anything to add on this, Dakota?
What I've found over the course of me writing for things is that it, like you say, it's sort of meeting in the middle. Your ideal collector is going to like things about you. So I always feel like saying, oh, it's totally about them isn't totally true, because it's also who are you trying to attract? And you have to let enough of yourself come through to connect with that person.
Exactly.
And I feel like that gets lost when it's like, it's all about your client, it's all about your client. It's absolutely all about your client, but you still need to tell that story. It's all about that storytelling.
Yeah. So when I say it's all about the client, I just want to make something really clear here. What I mean by that is, when you're talking, you need to know who you're talking to, right? Otherwise, it's just words and there's no emotional connection, right? If, again, I take the example of talking to a child, right? If I know that when I have my kids are running around and I'm just splurting something out in the living room, like pick up your stuff, nothing happens. But if I get their attention and I'm like, hey, buddy, I know you're playing, I know you're having fun, and we're going to be having dinner in 5 minutes, so I'd like you to pick up your stuff, please. All of a sudden, I have the attention. I'm talking to him. I understand that he has his toys and he wants to play, but now he gets me too. He knows what I want. I know what he wants. And now we're talking the same language and I get a result, okay? So that's really what I mean when I'm saying about knowing who you're talking to and making it that you are getting their attention first by showing that you understand and that you're connecting, and then delivering the message that you want to share, right? Because you're right, Dakota, people are coming to you because they want to hear what you have to say, right? But people love hearing about themselves also.
Yeah, I think your point about speaking the same language encapsulates that idea really, really well.
Yeah. Okay, quickly, bio. Okay, so bio, what's the difference between a bio and an artist statement? It's really simple. Bio is about you. Artist statement is about the work, okay? If we want to keep it super, super simple, you don't necessarily have to have them separate, okay? But it depends what your vision and for your career is, right? If you want to go the very traditional route and apply to grants and apply to residencies and apply to galleries and things like that, then it's better that you always have in your sleeve your bio, your artist statement, because people are going to ask for it and you're just going to have it ready. And it's not something that you should be scrambling to change every time somebody asks you for it, right? This should be like maybe revisit it, what, Dakota, once a year maybe, just to make sure that it's on track and that you add whatever, not anything new that's added. But it shouldn't be something that you keep tweaking and tweaking every other week, or you'll go crazy.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't drive yourself crazy.
And also because it's another reason, like you were saying earlier, to doubt yourself every time you're writing, right? So and it's always a good idea. I would say, I'm the first to say you need to trust yourself. And even if it's not perfect, put it out there and do it. I'm the first one to say that. But when it comes to something like your bio and artist statement, it's worth having someone double check it for you to make sure that it's people understand it. It's aligned with really what you want to say, and there's no error in it, especially if you're using it to apply to different places. It should be flawless. So what do we have in a bio? Okay, so a bio usually is written at the third person, right? And more or less 150 words, depending on what kind of background you have. You don't have to put everything that I put in here, right? It's just some notes to help you get started, right? Where you're from, what brought you here, professional and educational background, what you're passionate about, what you're creating, what you're currently working on, where your work can be seen or has been seen, and anything else that's relevant. If your work is in any prestigious collection, you should add it. If your work has been sold in different countries, it can help you to say that. If you have a background in, if you have a degree in fine arts, whether it's a master's or something else, I would mention it. If you have any other degree and you want to share it, I think it's a good idea. But I would also say how it maybe supports your work, having a degree. Let's say you have a degree in marketing, or you have a degree in physics, right? Well, has this influenced your work in any way? Maybe you want to give a little more information. If you're a self-taught artist, don't use the word self-taught artist. It really doesn't support anything. It doesn't give any, it doesn't really add to your credibility to say that. Just don't mention it. Or if you want to say how you learned, and if it's relevant to better understand what your work is about, then great. But always think about every sentence that you write in your bio and your artist statement. You want to ask yourself at the end, like, why is this interesting? Why is this relevant? How is this helping people build the know, like, trust factor for me, right? And if it's not, then scrap it. Because, and I'm going to let Dakota say it, but we both really agree. Because if we hear this one more time, go ahead.
Don't start with, I've been painting since I was 3 years old. It's like, don't. Everybody says that.
Yeah. And so starting a bio saying that you've been painting since as long as you could remember doesn't help us. Like, it doesn't add anything. Now, if you just started painting later on in your life, already that can be more interesting, right? Because we all imagine that artists started, because you know what? In kindergarten, we all painted, by the way. So it just so happens that some of you became artists and some of us didn't. But here's the thing, right? If, and I was talking about this, I think it was with Julia, if there was a trigger, if something happened when you were a child or in your teenage years, and that's really what kind of crystallized or made it really clear It can be tragic, it can be funny, it can be, it, again, we're going back to storytelling, right? If there's something that adds value, that makes me better understand you, that happened in your childhood, that happened in your teenager, perfect, add it. But if it's a word, a sentence that I could take and plug into any other artist bio, then don't put it. It's not adding any value. The same way, right? If you started painting later on in life, right? Well, tell me why, and so that I can better understand and pique my interest and want to know more about it. How does that sound, Dakota?
I think that's spot on. I mean, I can think of a couple of exceptions for why you would say you've been painting since you were 3. Maybe you studied at the feet of some really well-known artist, and that's what kind of triggered your artist journey. Or maybe you had an exhibition at 3. I've seen it a few times in actors' bios where they had a breakout role at 3 or 4, and it's done in it's a tongue-in-cheek, ironic way. My breakout role was as the third wolf in some children's play, and that has a purpose in letting people know how long they've been acting, but without being really specific about it. But their bios are a lot longer a lot of times too. So yeah, like Catherine's saying, it really needs to have a point. There needs to be a story. There needs to be
a reason.
Something there.
Why you're telling me this, right?
Right.
Otherwise, if it's too vague, if it's too general, you're not creating that emotional connection, right? But if I can start seeing you at 3, right, because something happened, and now I can visualize it, and now I can see, okay, well, now I understand why her work is like this, or his work has this dimension to it, then it supports the case. Perfect. Otherwise, it's just, don't try to fill in just to put fill-ins. That's basically the point we're trying to make here. Okay. And same thing for artist statement. Okay, so artist statement about your work, bio about yourself, and it's the opportunity to explain your work in your own words. It should be simple, easy to understand alongside your work. Okay, here's the thing. Especially if your work is more conceptual and people are looking at it and they're just like scratching their heads, right? The artist statement is kind of supposed to support you when you're not around, okay? So if it's filled with buzzwords and phrase sentences that look like they came from an art history book of the 1980s, then you're not helping, okay? You're not helping the person who's trying to understand your work, and you're not helping yourself, because if people don't understand the work, they're not interested in purchasing it, okay? So really, it should be simple and easy to understand, so that if someone reads it, they don't need another layer of explanation. That artist statement explains what they are looking at, okay? So keep it simple. Again, like I said earlier, we talked about having your bio artist statement read from another point of view to make sure that it's written properly, no grammar errors. But the artist statement, give it to people and ask them, like, do you understand now? Or what did you understand here? And see what kind of feedback you're getting, and see if it's the right feedback that you want to get, okay? Because it used to be that, and we still see it, but the more complicated the artist statement, the more valuable the art was, right? But I feel that this is no longer true, and it's going to be less and less true as online sales of art continue to ramp up, okay? Because, I told you this already, online sales of art, it's at its infancy stage. It's going to grow exponentially over the next few years. And it's going to become increasingly important that people understand what the art is about by reading about the art, by watching videos about the art, because they're not going to be as much, won't have as much the opportunity to connect with the art face to face when they're buying online. So again, some ideas to get you started on the artist statement. Artist statement should be written at the first person. Again, 150 word is fine. Don't be too fancy, right? What inspires you? What do you want to communicate with your art? What techniques and mediums you're using? What is your creative process all about? What challenges do you encounter? I often get the question, should I have just one artist statement, or should I have an artist statement by body of work? Should every piece have an artist statement? So clearly not every piece should have an artist statement, because normally your body of work should be cohesive and should all kind of be aligned with these items that I just talked about. Sometimes it makes sense to have like an overarching artist statement that will be maybe on your about page on your website, and then you could have let's say you do a solo show, you have a new body of work you're presenting, there's a theme around that body of work, your show has a title, a new series of pieces, and then you decide that this is worth having its own artist statement, the statement about that specific body of work. Now, I have no problem with that, makes total sense, but that specific body of work and its statement, in my opinion, should be still aligned with your overarching message and artist statement for your work. Am I making sense here? Am I being confusing, or?
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
You want to convey, presumably you're being driven by the same motivation.
Exactly.
Each body of work.
But if that body of work is very specific, right? You're narrowing it down to one specific issue, message, motion, situation, right? So maybe this is like your body of work is about a specific time in your life, right? So you want to name it, but things like that. But again, everything should come together. It's like artists people who know you and you know your work from the past. So if it's in disruption with what you've done before, then you need to explain that it's in disruption. If it's in alignment, if it's in continuity, you also need to explain that it's in continuity, right? Because you're not going to be doing the same thing over and over again for, your whole life. The other thing is an artist statement will evolve over time also. It's not like you're writing your artist statement here today and now you're kind of stuck in the box, and for your whole artist career you need to continue to do the same thing over and over because you wrote that artist statement, right? Your artist statement doesn't dictate your practice. Okay, so an about page, right? So the about page is a tricky one, okay? And we even talked about it, Dakota and I. Depending on what type of art career and business you want to move towards, right? So on one end of the spectrum, there is like exclusive gallery representation, museums, working on the art market through third parties. And then on the other side of the spectrum, right, there are people who are artists who are selling direct using the internet, no third parties, and they're basically running their own show, right? And then there's like this whole gray area where people are doing a mix of different streams of income, doing different things. So there's no right or wrong way to do an about page. There's just, what is it that you want? Who is it that you want to drive traffic to your website? Who do you want to come to your website, and how you're going to talk to them, right? So if your target audience, right, is a gallery and you want to get, you know, gallery representation, exclusive representation, get your work in museums, well, a simple bio, artist statement, a downloadable resume, some press can be, you know, sufficient. If you're selling direct through the web, then you need to go more in depth around storytelling, right? You need to create more of an emotional connection, right? Because now it's not just a portfolio site, it's an e-commerce site, right? So you need to grab people's attention, tell more of a story, connect emotionally with your reader, have more client testimonials, right? Some social proof and calls to action. Because when I go on a website and I read the about page, and when I'm done reading the about page, the person doesn't tell me what to do next, then I get to decide what I do next. And what I do next could be to close that website, right? So having an invitation to take action, right, to either view the work, connect with you, read some press, do something, is really important. Don't let people just wonder what they should be doing next. Just give them a direct call to action, okay? So I know some of you asked for, going way over time here as usual. Okay, so basically communicating your brand. What I want you to do, we're gonna give feedback now, but it's really to really understand what your communications and sales channels are, right? So whether it's through social media, using Pinterest, your website, brochures that you might have, tools that you're using to promote shows like postcards. If you're reaching out to designers, maybe you have different tools to work with them. If you are doing a show and you have other material to promote it, ads, things like that. What I want you to do is always make sure that you're looking at all the different ways that you have, all the different touch points that you have. It can be your blog, your email newsletter, right? And making sure that it's cohesive, making sure that it's on brand, and making sure that it's all, it's all sharing the same message, and it's all making it clear what your brand and your values are, and how to create that emotional connection with them, okay? So, and that's really like a couple of times a year, going through your different communications channels and making sure that everything is up to date is not a bad idea, because sometimes we forget, okay? Okay, so I really want to, okay, so we're gonna get feedback. One thing that Dakota wanted me to say is that we're gonna give feedback. Nothing is perfect, okay? But nothing is wrong either, okay? So I just want to acknowledge that you're putting yourself out there, you're trying things, and you know how I say, like, we try things, we get feedback, right? We build on what's working, we leave behind what's not working, we scale, we pivot, we scale, okay? So let's not take this, like, whatever comment we give you, take some, leave some, do what you want with it. But just the fact that you're showing up, that you're writing, that you're being visible is already a huge step, right? And what we want is just to give you a quick few tips to make it even more effective, okay? Because it's never going to be right. It's not a perfect science. It's never going to be right, right?
Absolutely. Everything evolves constantly. Mm-hmm. You know, it's changing as you figure out who is your target market, and then maybe your target market isn't quite who you thought it was, and it's a segment of that or whatever. So it's an evolution. Even the biggest brands do that.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start with Edward. So this is Edward's artist statement. You want to start, Dakota?
Sure. So Edward, I looked at this last night and made a few notes. Catherine and I have already kind of mentioned that, starting with the length of time that you're making art needs to be tied into a story or made really relevant. Some of the things that I noticed about your bio, like I felt like that second paragraph where you talk about the diverse materials that you use is really what I would choose to take and make more prominent, because what is driving you to do that? That's the thing where it's like, oh, that's interesting. And in the pedestrian pathways, it's interesting. And when I went and I looked at your work, actually, that's not what I expected because it was inspired by pedestrian pathways. And I'm like, okay, is that like the shape of the sign? And that's what you're replicating? And it was actually not. And it was the movement of transportation and that, I mean, I'm sure you've got more thoughts about that. But those are the things that I would kind of bring up more to the forefront. I would also try to vary the length of your sentences, because it all sort of, if you read it aloud, it's all kind of in the same meter. And I always recommend reading things aloud because it gives you a really good feel for what it's going to sound like in somebody else's head, and make it really, make it active too. Like don't be passive in your writing. And that's not just you, that's everybody. I am constantly editing for that. So
can you give a specific example of passive versus active, Dakota?
Well, like the second sentence here, it's like, while earning a living, he also explored. I would change that to make it, I didn't go through and like try to rewrite anything when I was looking at this, but I feel like the action there is at the end of the sentence. And so what you want to do is you want to bring that exploration up to the forefront. A lot of times the other thing you'll see is like two verbs. I'm not bringing a specific example to get to mind at the moment, but it's like, let's see. So down here in the second to last full paragraph, the signs intrigue him. That's passive in the sense that it's like, well, why? What is it about the signs that are gripping you? What's making you pay attention to them? I would really want to make that more specific. You know, what's grabbing you, particularly because I didn't get the actual art style from this paragraph. Mm-hmm. You know, so does that help?
Wait, I need to unmute you. Go ahead.
Oh, does that help? I hope that helps.
It helps a lot. Yeah, I'm busy thinking while you're saying this. I actually went in and changed the first two sentences based on what you said before. I don't know if you can refresh that and they'll come up.
I just tried changing this after. Okay, so that's what you had before.
Right.
Life is influences transition to full-time art making.
So is that a better?
I like it better. Ed, is it Ed or Edward?
Either one. I get four different names.
So now my question is, okay, well, how does the commercial photography influence what you're doing now? Why is that relevant?
I added it because down further it says my work was inspired by photos I shot of pedestrian pathway signs. Oh. So how I see the world, how I see art is influenced a lot by looking through a camera for 45 years.
Mm-hmm. So maybe, well, that's what's interesting. You know what you just said, so much of Ed's work is inspired by photos he shot of pedestrian pathway signs while being a commercial photographer most of his adult life.
Or as a commercial photographer for X number of years.
Like, don't come to me for grammar, okay? Go to Dakota for grammar. But for the storytelling part, you see how these two parts come together actually and are really telling a story. Now we can imagine you as a professional photographer walking around with your camera and being like intrigued by these pedestrian pathway signs and photographing them, and then coming back into the studio and exploring those. Like all of a sudden I can see you doing these things, but if one part is at the beginning and the other one's at the end, we're not making that connection.
Right. Well, I'm not good at this, but I have to build the story out.
Yeah,
So,
but I think all the elements are there, but it's just I think you kind of went with the traditional way of, okay, I'm going to start by talking about this, and then the second paragraph is going to be about this. But really, there are things that could, and
I'm absolutely terrified of doing this.
Don't be. So many people are. And here's the thing I always say to anybody who sends stuff to me for editing. You did the hard work.
Mm-hmm.
You took the ideas out of your head and you put them on the screen or on paper, and you wrote them out in a coherent way. Now, whether that can be played up, whether that can be juiced up, that's kind of beside the point. You've already done the hard work.
So I have two questions. One's, how personal should it be? Because that's where I have difficulty, because I know a lot about how I do what I do and why I do it and so forth, but I always feel that that's putting too much out for people, or that's getting them into my inner stories. I don't know, maybe that's okay to do that.
My first question would be who your ideal client is. Do they want that? Because
I've got no idea.
Catherine and I had a conversation about this, that anybody who's buying your art is in some way trying to be part of your experience. And that can be simply, I really like the way this person sees the world and I want to share that. Mm-hmm. So by buying this piece of art, I can be closer to the artist, or I feel like I'm able to emulate the artist's experience, or I am living a more artistic experience because I have this piece of art. Or it can be on the flip side of that, I bought this really expensive piece of art and look at me because I'm supporting this artist's lifestyle. I mean, they're both really valid. Everybody has different reasons for why they're going to purchase that art, but ultimately it's going to come down to what experience are they buying? And Catherine says this all the time, right?
But also, I would add to that like, I think you can go as personal as you feel comfortable going if it's relevant. If it's relevant. Like, I can tell you a story about, what happened to me last night when I was cooking dinner, and it's interesting, but it's irrelevant, right? So, but if it helps me better understand and value the work, right? If it makes me want to know more about it, if it makes me, want to look at it longer, because now I'm seeing things that I hadn't seen. Now I understand things that I didn't understand. Then absolutely put it. And again, that's what happens when we're trying to do everything by ourselves and we're trying to figure it out. Like, test it, ask people, ask the group. We have an amazing group for that. So try things, test it, okay? And we'll see, we'll go and we'll try different things, but I don't think there's such a thing as being too personal. Usually that's when really people resonate most. Just in terms of, I don't really have much to add other than this block and this block is redundant. I would keep it all at the bottom, and some information is repetitive. And this, I don't feel adds, this sentence doesn't really add anything because it's all things that you've already said. Plus it's kind of generic. It's just like a list of words that anybody could use, as opposed to this, where you're really telling a story and you're making us better understand where your work fits and why you're creating what you're creating. Good?
Yeah, if I can hop back in for 2 seconds.
Yeah, because we have like 6 more to look at.
Yeah. So I would also say that, again, going back to how you're creating your art, I'm interested in how that relates to the photography. What are you trying to do there? And then also, for you, I looked at your blog real quick, trying to get a better sense of you. And I would encourage you to push your stories a little further. They're there, like the one about your dad. Okay. Like, think about taking that just a little bit further.
Okay. In the statement here, would it be good or okay to add a photo in it to make it more explicit about the pedestrian signs?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, times 1,000.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Yes, that makes it even more interesting. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, next. You are very welcome. So Grace, okay. So there's a lot of things in here, okay? I'm just gonna.
So I can start, if that helps.
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to scroll it so that people can read it.
Okay. So with this, Grace, I was really, wow, your story is really cool. And so what I wanted to know more about was how that affected your decision to go back to art and how it affects how you're creating art. What was the struggle post-concussion to create? What were your feelings about that situation? I felt like there was hints of a story there, and it could have been built out more, or it could be built out more to create more connection. I have it pulled up on my computer too, so I'm gonna.
But I just want to add something to that also. If, for instance, in your case, Grace, if it would be like, since it's more an about page than, you know, a rigid artist bio or statement, in your case, it's really more an about page. Maybe what you could do, if it would be too lengthy to go into the details, is maybe when you're talking about it to link it and then maybe have a blog post that really goes into depth. So people, because like Ed said earlier, like how much do I go in depth? Like some people are interested, some people not so much, right? So what you could also do is link it to a blog post where you're kind of being more raw and vulnerable and telling your story for those who really want to go more in depth and better understand how that relates to your art. And then maybe in that blog post, you share a few images of art that you created right after your concussion and how it all helped you with your recovery and things like that, right? So so that can also be another way to go more in depth without having an about page that's goes on and on and on.
Yeah, no, I don't mean like go on and on and on. I just mean that those are the elements that it's like, oh, you can pull those out. The other thing was that you say a couple of times that you have this belief that everyone can experiment and benefit from creativity, and if you're gonna, you don't need to have that twice. Like that's a place where you could sort of reduce what you have. And how does that relate to what you're doing a little more strongly? Also, technically, if you can edit your URL and have it just about without the -1, that would be helpful for people as well.
Personally, when I read this, it's not really a vision, it's more of a mission. Okay, what you believe and what you are doing is more of a mission statement. A vision statement would be more like how you would want the world to become, or where you see yourself, or where you would like, I'm not being clear here, but a vision statement looks forward. It's about the future. A mission statement is about what you are doing now and what you are believing in right now, right? So I think this is more of a mission statement rather than a mission statement. It's more a mission statement than a vision statement. And here, I was curious to know why it's a 2015 artist statement. Because, like we said, there shouldn't be a date attached to an artist statement and bio. You're muted, Darlene. Let me unmute. Okay, you're talking. Okay, go ahead.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I should probably just delete that. That was one of the only pieces of writing that I transferred from my old website before I completely revamped it. So it's like outdated.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of redundant also as you read it. So I would probably leave that part out. You might just want to have eventually maybe at the bottom kind of your official bio, which is like maybe just four or five lines that you will use, especially since you mentioned that next year you want to apply to shows and things like that.
Yeah.
You have this like official bio that people can either come pick up on your site or that you're going to use to apply to different places, written at the third person in a more official, because, you know, like it's great to have like this, like, I think it's fun that you put your cat there and things like that, right? But when you're applying to shows and you're showing galleries and things like that, that's not what they want to see. So you need to have something that's kind of official, third person, that you can plug and play in any place.
Would it look disjointed going from such a personal first person voice to third person?
Well, you could have it here as a link, right? So you could have like official artist bio or something like that, or you could have like a line and then have a title, official artist bio, and put it there.
And I've seen that with other websites where people, it's kind of funny, like they have like 3 different about statements. I'm not suggesting that you do that, but they'll have like a sort of personal first person one, and then they'll have, and here's the media clip. And they'll, you know, again, it depends on who you're going for. I'd forgotten that you're gonna try to go for galleries.
So, and also if you have like a press section, it could be, the official bio can be under your press section as well. But it's a good idea to have one like available somewhere that you can direct people to specifically.
And you'll put that on the same page, not as a separate page and say like my sidebar, right?
No, don't do a side. No, don't do another menu item for that, because now you're just wasting a click.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Okay. I'm just going to move this so we can read it. Okay. You see, this is a good example of using your childhood. Okay. This. See, like she explains why. So this is the about page or the artist statement. So how does this come in when you're, okay. So Bonnie does, okay. So Bonnie separates artist statement, bio. Okay. I just want to come quickly see what's in here. Okay. Now I understand better. Sometimes context helps. Because I feel like I've been on this website many times, but I discover new things every time I'm in here. Okay, go ahead, Dakota.
I had only looked at the artist statement.
Yeah, this is it.
Not the bio. Yeah.
No, me neither. So, me neither. I had just looked at it. I just wanted to make sure she had something else.
Yeah. So what I noticed about this is I really liked a lot of the things that she had to say, but I would simplify the language just a little bit. And I actually, I asked her in the Facebook group who her ideal client was. And I do not mean this in any way to be insulting. I see this as more of like a new age pagan than the suburban mom that I felt like she was kind of going for a little more. And so I would encourage her to read. There's so many blogs that I closed my Facebook out and I don't remember exactly how she said it, but you know, it was like middle class moms who have a blog who are interested in nature. And I feel like there's a lot of those people out there who have blogs and who have language, and I would encourage her to read some of those and see where she's falling in terms of where they're at. And I might be a little swayed because I ran across a site that was very New Age pagan, and they're very much about the mysticism of nature. And like I said, I'm not insulting that at all too, because I recognize that and I really enjoy it. That's what I try to express in my artwork. But it's so dense that it's easy to get lost in what's going on. And I would want to simplify the language just a little bit. So that was really kind of the big thing for me. There's a few typos in there that I found. I didn't write down what they were specifically. And then the C's at the very top confused me. I think there's a different character that's getting used there, like in rocks and backyard. Because I looked at the rest I looked at something else on the website and that didn't show up again. So it looks like maybe there's something weird in the HTML code.
Mm-hmm. I really like it. So I really don't have much to say. I really like it. Because I find it, like I read it and I find it calming, soothing, and I find that it's like you, Bonnie. So that part I like. I like how you did talk about your childhood, but it serves a purpose, right? It kind of leads us into what it is that you're doing, how you're doing it, and it helps us like paint a picture. So that's interesting for me as well. I don't think you need these subtitles. Do you recommend those, Dakota? I feel
they can help with SEO if they're used appropriately.
Yeah, but in this case,
yeah. In this case, I don't think I would use them, or if I did use them, I would try to make the titles. I made that note on somebody else's too. That the headlines I like to have convey a complete story in themselves.
Yes,
exactly. That's kind of a personal preference, maybe, but what is the point of the headline?
Yeah,
and make it tell something.
In this case, like my process is a quiet conversation, right, or something like that, and then you explain, right?
Yeah.
So because just write movement, subject, process doesn't really add much unless you want to, like it's like a title of a chapter or something, right?
Yeah. I would, I mean, even if you just expanded that a little bit to my subjects, my process, movement doesn't quite fit in there. It's not quite the right.
Well, because movement is an explanation of your work,
right.
But then subject and process isn't. So that's why it's kind of tricky there. So either you just remove it, all of it, or you make sure that the three of them work together and are adding something to the story, not just fillers. Okay, Chris. Okay, official here, like you see Grace, you see how she did it here? So she has a more, fun about page where she talks about herself, and then boom, official bio. Okay. Okay. Dakota?
This is actually the one that I commented about with the URL.
Okay.
Also, I would.
Oh, yes, here, Chris, should be just about. This is a Squarespace thingy.
Okay.
You can fix it. Takes a second.
Yeah, I think, it's like when people type in about, they're going to type about, they're not going to type the numeral. Again, like there's a very cool story here.
Yeah.
Who you were and how that fueled your art, and what that turned into. Like, I think that that's super cool. So I didn't have a whole lot of content change. What I would say is watch the timeline, because when you are writing in their second big paragraph, you're talking about being a child, and then you talk about after years of anxiety and competing, which jumps forward in time, and then you go back. And that's confusing to readers. So I would smooth that out and make sure that your timeline is consistent there.
That's true.
And then there is the repetition of the scene heard, which I think can be powerful, but I also I'm trying to remember exactly what I was thinking last night, but it was like I wanted it to be maybe a little bit more grounded, not just repeated, but expanded upon. Mm-hmm. And then this is also where I wanted, I like your headlines, but also make them be a complete story as well. You know, have your, this is an opportunity for you to say, I grew up invisible, and that's why, I'm not saying you should use this wording, but that's why images speak louder. And
so
as a result,
this plus this plus this should tell a story?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Because, you know, so people often scan. They don't, less than 2% of readers will make it to the end of a 2,000-word article. Mm-hmm. You know, the ideal length for blog posts and emails and things is kind of right. There's a range, but it's between 250, 500, 750 words. Yeah. You know, unless you've got a really compelling story, you're going to lose people. And a lot of times people will just scan. And so if you can catch them with those headlines and go, oh, I resonate with that. I felt invisible too. Yeah. Oh, yeah, images, you know, that's a way to catch them and get them to read more.
I love that idea. It's like when there's a blog post about a list, like top 5 things, you just read the subtitles of, you know, the list, and then you just, if the subtitle is interesting, then you'll go and you'll read the rest. Mm-hmm. Love it. Good. I don't know why there's this big space here also right now. Or maybe you want to, yeah, this is kind of, because you have your official bio here, you have your about page here, and this is kind of floating, and we don't really know why you're telling us this at this point, right? So either you should have a subtitle for this, or if it's all in your official bio, maybe you don't need it. Anyway, this part for me, when I was reading, I was just like, why is she telling us this at this time? Yeah.
I would also, this is nitpicky, that very last sentence.
Yeah.
I cook a mean Thai curry. I would say I also cook a mean Thai curry. That ties it in to the first sentence, makes them hang together, and just conveys a more complete picture of who you are. Grammatically, that's what I would do.
Perfect. Okay. Melissa. So Melissa starts with her official bio. Then she has a resume, her press, a little bit about herself here. There's a lot on this page. More press, artist statement. Okay. The artist statement, I had to look for it before I... Personally, Melissa, I don't think you're really making it justice by putting it here. I don't know how you feel, Dakota, but
I think it's a complicated page.
Yeah.
Which makes it, and Melissa is going more for galleries, right? Is that?
Well, that's her next step, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I did like how it felt more formal. Yeah. It comes, you know, it is more formal, again, speaking the language of who you're trying to connect with. Just getting sort of picky. And I'm interested in your take on this. the second to last sentence in her about, I would personally try to shorten. It's a little bit long, and yep. And it's interesting because with the galleries, like you and I discussed, you try to give them a sense of how worthy you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, it's not, I don't think the education should be removed, but I think if I was writing it, I would probably say, also studied at boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And, would just try to shorten those and make them very quick.
Yeah.
And also include the St. Lawrence University in that sentence.
Yeah.
Also studied at.
The fact that you started exploring at age 7 doesn't add anything here.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put that. I would just have one sentence that just covers all your education.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably bring your artist statement right under here. So
I agree with that.
Artist statement, boom, because artist statement below here really doesn't come, and it's way too far before we, and then, people can skim through the resume if they want. And here, I don't know why you're adding this layer again. Like if you need to add to the artist statement, then put it in the artist statement. Otherwise, just leave it. And here I'm not sure if it's me or my English, or I'm not sure what this meant. Abstract memories are what inspired the imagery.
Yeah, that should be a mine.
This should be what?
My abstract memories.
Abstract memories are what inspired the imagery.
Mm-hmm. And I really like the artist statement for how it explains her process.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a really good combination of explaining something that's a complicated concept, but making it accessible to somebody who's not a PhD reader.
Yeah.
Like you said, I wouldn't double it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would move it up. And I had a note here that was reflected in the imagery, how. And I think I wanted more expansion on that concept somehow. Short expansion, but expansion. Oh, the other thing, sorry, Catherine, is in the about up top, she says she has exhibited consistently, and I would change that to present tense, make it exhibits.
Okay, yes.
Because she has stuff in 2017, 16. I mean, she's out there, so it's not past tense.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few things here. Cataloging, I'm not sure. Yeah. Line shapes, etc. There's a few also, it would be maybe appropriate to, once you do a few changes, you have someone just reread it for you to make sure that the grammar works. And then see if this, does it really add? Because you already talked about memories, you already talked about, colors and shapes and lines. So do you really need to add this? If so, add it in here. Otherwise, let it go. Because sometimes, coming back to what Edward said at the beginning, too much then creates more confusion, right? It's like when you have an argument and it's okay, you've said what you had to say. Sometimes talking it over once more doesn't help, okay? So here I feel like you've said what you had to say. Adding more just adds a layer of confusion, what I didn't understand properly the first time, you had to tell me more. So I thought I understood, now I'm confused, okay? So let's try to keep it simple, Melissa. Great, okay. Kathleen. So we just saw earlier, a few minutes before Kathleen and Janet. So you need to give us a second to go through it again.
Catherine, where is Kathleen based?
She's in Belgium.
Oh, okay, I just saw that. Sorry.
Okay, so you really simplified it since the last time I looked at it, which I like. My comment is not really a comment around how you're saying it. I'll leave that to Dakota if she has something to say, but it's a lot about you, not a lot about the work. And by reading the work, the words, I'm still struggling to like figure out what the work is about or what it represents or the story behind the art. So you're telling us things, you're giving us objectives or like illustrating, painting, mixed media, how you observe the world around you, but it's still, I feel it's a little bit generic, and I would want it to be more specific to you and the work and the aesthetics of the work and how this all comes together.
Yeah, so for the wording, if you're ready to move on.
Sure, I have other things to say, but I'll let you.
Oh, no, you can finish. That's okay.
Okay. Here, when you say her aim is to work in a more consistent style over the course of 2018, this is okay that you know this. This is okay that we talk about this over the lab. This is not something you should put on your website. First, people don't really understand what that means until they see it, right? And it's like you're kind of like you're putting yourself out there, and then your last sentence, it's like you're pulling away from us, right? It's like, I know I'm not ready. I know it's not perfect. So, come back and it'll be better next time you come around, right? So it's kind of you're hesitating, and you want us to, you want the last sentence to be, either a call to action or end on a strong note, right? And if you want to talk about your vision for the future, well, tell us more about, what subject matter you want to tackle in next year, or what's your vision for your work looking forward. If that was your idea, but now it's kind of like you're justifying yourself, and I want you to, be as confident in your words as you are on that photo of you that you look so great on. I don't know. Do you agree? Yeah,
I definitely agree. What I was going to say is I feel like this is all split into like two distinct parts. Mm-hmm. And those first 3 paragraphs, I want condensed into 2 sentences because I don't feel like it does a lot for you as an artist.
Yes.
It's like, okay, here's your background, but so what? I don't want to sound harsh, but it's like, what does that have to do with anything?
Especially this one, because really it comes back to what we've talked about before. Nobody wants to feel like they're giving you a chance or buying that first artwork of yours, right? So it's good to say that all your experience has brought you to here, but then keep it there and then talk about what you're doing, why it's relevant, why it's different, why it's exciting, why we should buy it.
Yeah, that 4th paragraph, honestly, I mean, maybe this sounds sort of harsh. I would just nix that entirely. I would completely take it out.
This one?
The one right above it. Yeah, sorry, because I'm looking at my personal.
Yeah. This one really doesn't help you. It really actually kind of, I feel, does the opposite, right? It just shows us that you're kind of figuring things out, which is normal, but we don't want to say too much.
Yeah. So, and then those last 3 paragraphs, that's the part that I'm most interested in, and that's the part that I would want to see expanded upon.
And being more specific.
At the moment, her style can be called eclectic. I don't know who she's going for as a ideal client. I do not like saying I have a style that can be called this.
No.
Maybe that's a personal preference, but unless there's a very recognizable period to it, and if you're going, for a gallery, then that's kind of one thing. But most people don't know art periods.
Yeah.
They don't know what that means.
And just to be clear, having an eclectic style in the art world is not a good thing. Okay? So it might be good to be eclectic in real life, but in the art world, when somebody says they're eclectic, it's not necessarily a positive thing. Okay?
Yeah, so I would want more description.
Yeah.
And then also with the paragraph just above the second to last one, with her work, she wants to come closer to her true self. Tell me how. Mm-hmm. That's a very, everybody wants to do that. And I mean, I really don't, I'm not trying to be harsh, but it's like everybody is kind of trying to make people realize, it feels like that anyway. Everybody's trying to make people realize something about themselves. So tell me how you're doing that. Don't just say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, bottom line, Kathleen, I think you need to put more emphasis on your artist's journey and your art itself, right? And the art itself. And I think what you have in these 3 paragraphs are good. It's not that you need to put them in the trash. It's just that, like I said at the beginning, after the end of each sentence, ask yourself why, ask yourself how, right? And how can you use words to bring up imagery and storytelling, really? And then the first part, just condense it so that, and if you want to, like I said earlier to Grace, right? If you have a blog or if you have, something that you want to direct us to where you really tell us your journey from corporate to artist, then or business mentor to artist, then that's great, right? Write a blog about it and send us to that, right? Or maybe a blog, or if you don't have a blog, it can be a Facebook post on your page, right? Where you share your journey and then you send us to that. But yeah, make it more about the art itself. Wonderful.
Yeah,
okay,
I wouldn't lead with that.
I'm sorry?
I wouldn't lead with I would lead with the art.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So really quickly, we're going to do Janet because we're already over time. I don't know if you're hearing my cat snoring in the background. It's so funny.
Your cat?
My cat snoring.
Oh, that's funny. I hear about pugs snoring, but not kitty cats. The first thing that strikes me is that I'm not real crazy about the repetition of light, color, and a love of nature in the bio and then in the artist statement. I would try to find a different way to say that because it's too repetitive so close together.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I like, I don't know if she's on, are you on the call? You're on the call. I like what you are saying. In your statement, I really like how you talk about your process. I know a piece is finished when it feels like a poem. That's beautiful. I really like that. The last paragraph, though, that feels like it belongs in your bio because it's not really about your art so much. And I don't know if I would include it, honestly.
This, in the future, I see myself?
Yep.
No, slash that out, Janet.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess my overall feeling is that I would try to really separate the bio and the artist statement and make them distinct pieces. And right now it all feels kind of like one big piece with some repetition in there. And I don't feel like I get a really good sense of who you are. Like I get your education and what you do, but but I don't know. I know what. Sorry, I want to know what you're going to have to say about this, Catherine. I feel like I want more about what drives you to do art.
This paragraph, I would not have it. The fact that you serve your community should be in your bio. Okay, Janet? Not in your, because the artist statement is about the art. So the fact that you serve your community should be in your bio because it's something you do. Okay? And then your artist statement, I really love this. I love it. I agree with Dakota that it's repetitive, the first sentence. So you need to decide where you want to put it. But then I feel like, okay, this is all nice and good, but I want to know more. Like, do you, like, are you inspired by artists and art history that we should know about? Are there some challenges that come with the work that you do? I feel like it's all there, but it's more of a description than like it's a description, like very like almost like chronologically, like you're telling us the story of the painting. But is there something that happens even before you begin the painting, right? Like, how do you choose the subject matter, right? Or why that subject matter? Like, do you see what I'm saying, Janet? What I mean by that, or am I tired?
No,
I muted you so you can answer.
So. You know, I feel like there's almost like it's me, but it's not me. I don't know why, but I feel like, you know, like there's a piece of my heart that's missing from there, and I don't know how to put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Because I feel that the part that's in you and the part that's like your heart and soul is really even before you begin the painting, right? And now you're really telling us about like kind of the mechanics of it, but all this inner experience that's going on that makes you ultimately choose that subject matter, you know, and then begin with the oils, that we don't know really.
Yeah, I have to agree. You know, it's interesting that you say that you feel like a piece of your heart is missing, because it does feel like you're trying to fit yourself into this box of very standard, what somebody would expect, style, bio, artist statement, about page. And honestly, I would suggest this to everybody, but also for Janet, do a free write for 10 minutes. Just put a timer on your phone or whatever you need to do. Do not think about what you're writing. Don't stop. And think about what motivates you, and just go as deep as you can. And I hope that explanation makes sense. You're not necessarily going to use those exact words in your bio or in your statement, but that's going to give you access to what is motivating you, what's driving you, what your story is, and then you can take it and refine it. And that's how a lot of people start. That's how writers start. You know, is to do free write. You have the permission to write the worst possible ungrammatical stuff, but start with that 10-minute free write and see where that takes you.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I think, like, I'm not saying this paragraph, it's good, everything's there, but it's very, like, it's the surface. It's the surface. You're telling us all about, like, literally, it's the surface that you're talking about, the surface of the canvas, but we all know that there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit about process. That's what I was thinking about. Process.
Well, like when you say I work quickly and intuitively, okay, let's take that one for example. And like, why is that interesting? I know why it's interesting, but someone who just comes about and is not necessarily, because we know that traditionally oils were not made to be done quickly and intuitively, right? So we know here that this is a disruption, but when you read it really quickly, your artist statement, it sounds like all really good and nice and happy and you're doing everything right. But then I work quickly and intuitively. You can pass by that sentence without even noticing it. But that's really important because traditionally oils does not rhyme with quick and intuitive. Okay, so why do you work quickly and intuitively? Maybe it's because of who you are. Maybe it's because you want to try to disrupt what's being done before. Maybe there's a bunch of reasons. How does that affect the result? How does that affect your process? Just that sentence alone could tell us a lot if it was expanded. Because I think it's super interesting and it's just kind of, it's just in the middle and you can bypass it super quickly and not even notice it.
Yeah, I'd almost say, the first couple of sentences in that paragraph, like for me, editing is always like a time process. I get more into it and then I see more things. Mm-hmm. And those first couple of sentences, I don't know if I would start with those if I was rewriting. And I wouldn't have picked up on the quickly and intuitively versus the oil thing because I'm not an oil person. So I think that's really, I would expand on that, like Catherine is saying. I would also say the love color or light color and a love of beauty. Now that I'm looking at again, I would push you further to say, okay, well that's great, but like what is it about those things that makes you want to express them?
I guess I always feel like I like the idea of linking it to a blog post because I have a lot more to say, but I get so tired I really don't like to read other people's stuff. So I get really bored with reading, and I put a link there. I'd be happy to put a link there. So
well, yeah, that could be a way of doing it, and maybe like put some elements in bold that are the core elements of your statement. That could also be a way of doing it. But that sentence, I feel, is really in disruption with what you do, and I think there's something there that's interesting.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We are done. I really appreciate you all staying. I really want to say a huge thank you to Dakota. Thank you, Dakota, for taking the time to read everybody's work and give some honest feedback. We're so lucky to have you. You're so generous with your time and your knowledge. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. This is fun. I love being able to, it's all about polishing somebody's message and making sure that it's out there the way they want it to be. And
Janet doesn't believe
passion.
Janet doesn't believe you that you think it's fun. Okay, well, thanks everyone for saying. I don't want to overextend, so thank you so much, everyone. We talked about a lot of things today, so feel free to go back and reread, re-listen, right? Because some comments that we said for one person could apply to another. We could have spent an hour just looking at one, right, and giving feedback on just one person. So sometimes you might have missed things, but hopefully this was useful. And we're always happy to continue the conversation on the Facebook group. If there's any follow-up questions that come up as you're watching the replay, don't hesitate to come on the Facebook group and talk to us about it. Okay? So thanks to everyone. It was so nice seeing you all live. And yeah, we'll talk again soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you again.